Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. And welcome back to the podcast. Yes, it's Friday. That means FOMO Friday. Yes, we love to dispense of your fear of missing out because you're not listening to propaganda media anymore and you want to know what's going on around you and around the world. And there's a lot of things going on around the world. And so let's get right into it. From a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this very first one, and it is a big one, of course, that everybody has on their minds, and that is Iran. Yes, Iran has rejected a U.S. proposal to end the war, dismissing it as unacceptable while vowing to continue fighting until its own conditions are met. A senior Iranian official on state-run media said Tehran would not negotiate under the current terms, calling the U.S. proposal excessive and insisting that no negotiations will be held before Iran's demands are satisfied. Yeah, they're in a position to negotiate. Well, such demands reportedly include halting attacks and assassinations, securing guarantees against future conflict, receiving compensation for damages and war reparations, ending fighting involving its allied groups, and gaining recognition of Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz as its natural and legal right. Yeah, none of that's going to happen. I can just tell you right now, none of that's going to happen, particularly the Strait of Hormuz. Anyway, quote, Iran will end the war at a time of its own choosing, and only if the conditions it has set are fulfilled. The Iranian embassy to Mumbai, India, posted on X, citing the official on state-run media, and it will not allow Trump to determine the timing of the war's end. It added that that it considers the U.S. proposal a deception aimed at escalating tensions. Quote, Iran has informed all mediators acting in good faith that a ceasefire will only take place once its conditions are accepted. Until then, no negotiations will be conducted. That may be because if somebody conducts negotiations, their life is pretty much over. I don't know. Either we bomb them because we know where they're at, or they get killed by their own guys because they're negotiating. I don't know. The rejection comes after the Trump administration presented a 15-point plan aimed at ending the conflict, delivering to Tehran through Pakistani emissaries. Pakistan has offered to help facilitate talks, though Iran state media has continued to deny that high-level negotiations are underway. The framework, shaped by top Trump advisors Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, mirrors previous Trump-era negotiations that used temporary ceasefires to create space for larger deals. Trump confirmed the 15 points of agreement on Monday, saying, quote, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number one. That's number one, number two, and number three, Trump said, adding that Iran had agreed to that point. They will never have a nuclear weapon. 14 of the 15 points reported by the Times of Israel via Israel's Channel 12 and not independently verified include, number one, Iran must dismantle its existing nuclear capabilities. Number two, Iran must commit never to pursue nuclear weapons. Number three, there will be no uranium enrichment on Iranian territory. Number four, Iran must hand its stockpile of some 450 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% to International Atomic Energy Agency in the near future, in a timetable to be agreed. Number five, the Natanz, the Isfahan, and the Fordo nuclear facilities must be dismantled. Number six, the IAEA and the UN's nuclear watchdog must be granted full access, transparency, and oversight inside Iran. Of course, Iran has agreed to that before and then just never let them in. Yeah. Iran must abandon, this is number 7, must abandon its regional proxy paradigm. Number 8, Iran must cease the funding, direction, and aiming of its regional proxies. Number 9, the Strait of Hormuz must remain open and function as a free maritime corridor. Iran has actually already threatened to try to shut down the Red Sea as well. But anyway, number 10, Iran's missile program must be limited in both range and quantity, with a specific threshold to be determined at a later stage. And number 11, any future use of missiles would be restricted to self-defense. In return, Iran would reportedly get, number 1, Iran would receive a full lifting of sanctions imposed by the international community. They would, the U.S. would assist Iran in advancing its civilian nuclear program, including electrifying electricity generation at the Bushehr nuclear plant. And number 3, the so-called snapback mechanism, which allows for the automatic reimposition of sanctions if Iran fails to comply, would be removed. Now, despite negotiation efforts, the war has shown no signs of slowing. Iran said it fired on the U.S. Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group, while Israel continued strikes on Iranian targets, including aerial naval weapons manufacturing sites on Wednesday. As of Monday, the U.S. has struck over 9,000 targets in Iran since the Operation Epic Fury began, according to the U.S. Central Command. And at the same time, the U.S. is rapidly increasing its military presence in the region. The Pentagon is preparing to deploy roughly 3,000 soldiers from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to support Operation Epic Fury, according to the Wall Street Journal. Officials said the move would give Trump greater flexibility in determining next steps, though no final decision has been made on deploying ground forces in Iran. On Wednesday, the Department of War announced a series of new agreements aimed at accelerating missile and defense manufacturing as part of a broader push to place the defense industrial base on a wartime footing. The initiatives, which include expanding production of missile systems, key components, missile defense technologies, things like that, are part of what officials are calling the Arsenal of Freedom. It's the push. It follows an executive order issued by Trump in January, barring defense contractors from stock buybacks and dividend payments until they increase production speed. Now, the order warned that delays and underperformance by contractors threaten national security, arguing that current output has not kept pace with the needs of the U.S. military and its allies. So, yeah, just continue effort in Iran right now. I think what Trump is doing here, just personally, I think what he's doing is he's buying some time, both on a couple different fronts, on financial fronts and on military front. I think he's buying time. I mean, if they came up with a satisfactory negotiation, then great. But I just don't think that's going to happen with Iran. And so what he's doing is he's buying some time here to get troops and things in place. And also, the stock market, particularly the oil market, is liking a lot of this, a lot of this stuff coming out of Washington, D.C. About negotiations and things. And so it's keeping the oil prices down a little bit. And I know you're saying, wow, I'm paying a lot more. Yeah, well, because we were at $50 a barrel oil and now it's at 100. But yeah, I mean, it could be a lot worse with the Strait of Hormuz shutdown. And so, and it will get probably worse as time goes by. But yeah, this is kind of doing both of those two things. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's a lot still to go, and we're still really early into this conflict. Well, speaking of landmark things that are happening, there was a landmark case that just happened this week. A Los Angeles County jury found that Meta and YouTube have contributed to growing mental health problems stemming from social media use. The social media giants must now pay $3 million in damages over personal injury caused by its platforms, and the verdict is expected to influence similar lawsuits throughout the country filed against social media companies. The case in California Superior Court centered on a 19-year-old woman referred to as KGM, who argued that social media platforms have knowingly designed their platforms to get children and young users addicted. Well, the California jury found Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, 70% responsible for the harm to KGM, and YouTube 30% responsible. This is according to NBC News. The verdict comes after a New Mexico jury handed Meta a $375 million bill in civil penalties after it found the company misled consumers about the safety of its platforms. Like the landmark case in Los Angeles, the New Mexico verdict is historic on its own as the first jury trial to find Meta liable for acts committed on its platform. And like the Los Angeles court verdict, Meta has said it will appeal the ruling. Quote, we respectfully disagree with the verdict and will appeal. We work hard to keep people safe on our platforms and are clear about the challenges of identifying and removing bad actors or harmful content. This is what Meta spokesperson said. We will continue to defend ourselves vigorously, and we remain confident in our record and protecting teens online. In a statement to the Daily Wire in January, YouTube said the allegations it faces in social media addiction suits are simply just not true. Quote, providing young people with a safer, healthier experience has always been the core of our work, said YouTube spokesman. In collaboration with youth, mental health, and parenting experts, we build services and policies to provide young people with age-appropriate experiences and parents with robust controls. The allegations in these complaints are simply not true. Well, KGM, social media addiction, which started when she was a minor, resulted in crippling depression, body dysphoria, and suicidal thoughts, according to the lawsuit. The suit was also filed against Snapchat and TikTok, but those platforms settled with KGM before the trial started. And KGM case is just the first of many that are expected to go to trial this year, targeting Snapchat, Meta, TikTok, YouTube, which is owned by Google. Social media platforms, including Meta and YouTube, have touted online safety features in recent years, such as Instagram's teen accounts and YouTube Kids, which are meant to create safer and more controlled experiences for children. Yet, even with these additional features, social media use for children remains a hotly debated issue. I don't know what to think on this one, to be honest with you. I mean, yes, I do believe that there can be an addiction to this type of thing. Where are the parents involved in this? I mean, my children do not, they don't have accounts. They don't scroll through Facebook. They don't go onto TikTok. None of that kind of stuff. And what little that they do get online and things, obviously we are very much involved as their parents to in what they see and what they have access to. So, I think a lot of this falls on the parents and how much screen time they allow, and what type of screen time is involved. I'm not sure if suing these guys. I mean, we've talked about this in the podcast before. Their defense to this is, hey, we're just the platform. We're not creating the stuff. All this kind of stuff. I don't go there with that, because I do believe that there does need to be some restrictions and things placed on them. And so, yeah, it's I fall that kind of in the middle on this. I don't think suing these guys is probably the right thing to do, because that's going to open up a whole can of worms here. But at the same time, you can't just say, "Well, hey, I didn't know what was going on. I'm just the platform." So anyway, we'll keep our eye on it. Well, with Trump doing a lot of stuff in Iran and in Venezuela and all this kind of stuff, it is making it a lot more difficult for our enemies. Yeah. And one of those enemies is Cuba. And I really liked this opinion piece by Peter Doran. He is a senior adjunct fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And he wrote an opinion piece. He says the communist dictatorship in Cuba has never been closer to collapse. Thankfully, the cadre of leftist American activists and influencers that descended on Havana this week will not be able to save it. Yeah, that's a whole nother story I wish we had more time for. But yeah, we had a bunch of just champagne leftists go down there and think that they're doing something good, and meanwhile staying at 5-star hotels and taking tours of poor people. Anyway, while the island endures its second total electrical grid collapse in a matter of days, the regime welcomed a delegation of limousine socialists from the United States. They quickly pulled out their phones, merging grotesque voyeuristic slum tourism with propagandistic live streams from their 5-star regime-owned hotel. As their diesel generators hummed, the rest of the country starved in the dark. The good news: this is late-stage communism. Cuba's 67-year-old experiment with Marxist ideology could finally end if the Trump administration avoids the traps of negotiation and holds the line on its successful oil embargo. It would be a historic accomplishment for Trump 2.0, and petroleum is the key. Margaret Thatcher famously observed that the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. This is happening in real time in present-day Cuba. The government has run out of other people's money and other people's oil. It scraped by for decades on Venezuelan crude shipments, which, using Venezuela oil imports to generate electricity, which is the least effective task imaginable. This imported crude is in addition to the 25,000 barrels of oil per day that the regime pumps for itself. The ouster of Nicolas Maduro and President Trump's total oil embargo have set a countdown clock for the regime. The punishment will continue. The power outage will get worse. What's more, they rarely recognize the breakdown in the paltry benefits the regime still offers. Decades ago, Bernie Sanders infamously claimed that bread lines were a good thing. Why? Because they meant that the poor were not starving. Bernie Sanders, man. Anyway, he goes on to say, eventually, he argued, people received bread. The 2026 energy shortage in Cuba has given that interpretation a new grim twist. Limited gasoline for transportation and power for baking means that there will be less bread for the bread lines. As President Trump recently noted, they have no energy. They have no money. They're in deep trouble. Yeah, and Trump is correct. I mean, I can interject here. The average Cuban makes $156 a year. Anyway, he goes on. Deputy Cuban Foreign Minister Fernandez de Castillo declared that the oil blockade cannot be sustained forever. The regime is obviously betting that the White House will eventually cave. This should not happen, since it will extend the lifespan of this regime once again. Conditions on the ground are ripe for public unrest, not seen since, well, Cuba's nationwide protests in July of 2021. Unlike the previous unrest due to blackouts, however, the regime no longer has a Venezuelan patrol to bail them out. The current strategy is to play for time. Here's what we do next, he says. The administration must hold the line on current oil embargo. The Cuban regime has learned how to manipulate public opinion by claiming that an end to the U.S. embargo will end the poverty of Cuban people. In reality, it is the regime's communist economic policies that have made them poor. It is why the cavalcade of socialist influencers have backfired on the government. By showcasing the desperate poverty of Cuban people and retreating to their hotel rooms to broadcast their support for the regime from a swanky 42-story high-rise, the woke circus of the Stop the Siege campaign inadvertently showed the disconnect between the luxury of communist elites and the people they imprison. Next, the administration should not accept the Venezuelan model for Cuba. Simply replacing a few leaders at the top will not cure the island's woes. Secretary of State Rubio seems to understand this and recently declared that Cuba's current leadership can't fix it, namely the economy. This is accurate. It is also why asking for a change in management at the top will not work. Cuba needs a fundamental restructuring, similar to Central Europe after 1989. As we learned from successful post-communist countries in Europe, gradual reforms lead to corruption and take too long to yield the desired results. Conversely, rapid change shocked the system into embracing free market mechanisms that have not existed for decades. Poland and the Czech Republic are the shining examples of this rapid teardown and rebuilding. And lastly, President Trump can and should do more to use the bully pulpit of his presidency to encourage the Cuban people. Ultimately, they cannot be given freedom. They must use the regime's weakness to seize their own national destiny. Trump has the loudest megaphone in the world, and he should use it to remind everyday Cubans that America is waiting to make the island rich through trade and investment, and most importantly, energy. Because none of this can happen while the current regime remains in power. The White House should fully embrace a straightforward idea: Viva Cuba Libre. I would agree with that. I mean, I think we're seeing some real things happening, kind of snowball effect here, because of the good things that have been happening around the world as Donald Trump has taken out some of these just terrible world leaders, and we're seeing a lot of good things happen because of it. Well, we talked a little bit about last week about Joe Kent and how he resigned from the Trump administration, and he's not a very high character individual. Well, Charlie Kirk's closest advisor, Andrew Clevitt, says images of a private group chat that he gave to Joe Kent, the intelligence official who just resigned from the Trump administration, later ended up on the Candace Owens show. Shocker. Clevitt, who remains the host of the Charlie Kirk show, said on Monday that he handed over messages to Kent because he had believed Kent to be trustworthy and seeking the same thing that he was, the truth about Charlie's assassination. Well, Clevitt said Kent urged him to make the messages public, and he declined. But then they ended up in the public sphere anyway. Here, this is what he said on the show.
Yes, in a spirit of looking at every lead, turning over every stone, we wanted everybody that needed to know anything that we knew. Not just, I mean, and by the way, we've been accused of not being interested in the truth.
And just to remind people what this is referring to, this is after Charlie's murder, there were text messages that from a private group chat that were made public and were used to, frankly, kick off the big conspiracy theory that we've run into over and over again, which is that Israel or the Jews had Charlie murdered.
Yes. So,
which we do not believe.
But we have been accused of trying to, or we're not interested in the truth. The actual fact of the matter is that behind the scenes, we have given everything we know to give, every single piece of information. This was one of them. I was told I could trust Joe Kent. I provided the screen grabs to Joe Kent, and I don't know what happened to them at that point. Okay, that I just want to make that very clear. Eventually, Joe did message me and suggest that I make those screen grabs public. I declined because those were shared privately. I didn't want to be reckless with them in the public. There could be innocent people on that group chat that would then be harmed. So I declined. But then fast forward another week or two, and they were made public. So that's what I know, is that Joe suggested that they be made public. I declined. Then they were made public. Can I 100% categorically say that he leaked them? No. But those are the facts. Maybe somebody on his team, maybe they got passed around, maybe somebody else leaked them. But those are the facts of the matter, and that's what I know.
Yeah, and the reason we're bringing this up, obviously, with his departure from the administration, there's a lot of debate over what it means. People have been arguing, was he a leaker? Some people have suggested he might be a criminal. He should be indicted. We're not saying that, but this has come up, and
well, and my name's getting tossed around with this as if I did something untoward. No, I don't regret any of it. I regret that they were leaked. I was told that I could trust them. I told that it was private and it would be guarded just to look into any possible leads. And by the way, we did that with a bunch of different things because we want the truth to come out. So we're not blocking anything. We don't even care if the answer is something that is really, really terrible. Okay. We want the truth. We want justice. And we believe that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. We believe that they got their guy. We have additional questions. But guess what? It was an egregious breach. Whoever shared that screen grab publicly, it was an egregious breach. And obviously, we're not happy about it. But can't put it back together again. Can't put the paste back in the tube, as they say. And so, again, I just want to be very clear. I don't know who ultimately shared that publicly. But the facts are, Joe Kent was one of the people that had it. Very, very, very small group of people. Maybe one of his team members, whatever. But he did suggest that it was shared publicly. We declined because Charlie had every opportunity to say publicly what he believed. He did not say that publicly. And so far be it from me to put words in his mouth. Okay. That was something that was private. So we wanted to keep it private. And I think that's being in keeping with being a good friend. Okay. Is preserving somebody's trust in their privacy. So now everybody knows. Yes, Joe Kent had it. Yes, he did suggest leaking it. Can't prove that he was the one. But those are the facts, because there's been a lot of noise made about this in the past, whether, in the recent week, about allegations of leaking and things like that. I got nothing. I don't know anything other than that piece of the puzzle. Okay, that's all I know. And I'm not going to recklessly tarnish somebody's reputation if I don't have all the facts. But now that my name's being brought up into it, I wanted to address it.
So
fair enough.
There he is. So what he was told was that he could trust Joe Kent, but he was proven wrong. So, yeah, I mean, does that mean that he actually did leak? Joe Kent did leak that information. Again, it's not terrible information. It's just that it's information that, you can twist and make it look like, make Charlie Kirk look bad. So anyway, it's just another notch in the, Joe Kent is not a very good guy. So anyway, lastly, I know a lot of times we try to go over something a little bit lighter, but today we have to cover something that may be a little bit sensitive about that maybe we try to make this a family podcast. But there's a thing here, and it's about abortion and some things that may be a little unsettling for younger people. And so I wanted to just give you a heads up before we get into this last story here. So now that you've been warned, and I don't know if you want to celebrate this or what, but an infamous Pennsylvania abortionist convicted of murder for killing babies born alive during illegal late-term procedures has died while serving multiple life sentences in prison, is what state officials said on Monday. This guy is basically, you could say he is the worst mass murderer ever in U.S. history. His name, Kermit Gosnell. You may or may not have heard of him. He died March 1st at the age of 85 after being transported from the State Corrections Institution at Huntington to a hospital. And he had been serving multiple life sentences following his 2013 conviction on 3 counts of first-degree murder. His West Pennsylvania abortion facility was dubbed the House of Horrors. The Gosnell case drew national attention after pro-life advocates highlighted the brutal nature of his abortion practice. Many of the gruesome details came out during his 2013 trial and through a grand jury report. Quote, "This case is about a doctor who killed babies and endangered women." This is the Pennsylvania grand jury report. And it said he regularly and illegally delivered live, viable babies in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and then murdered these newborns by severing their spinal cords with scissors. Now, testimony during the trial described the practice in detail. We're not going to go too deep into that. But Stephen Massoff, one of Gosnell's former employees, he explained the process when he said that, quote, "We call it a transection, but it's literally a beheading." Massoff estimated that around 100 babies had their spinal cords snipped, and he said he felt like a fireman in hell. "I couldn't put out all the fires. I would run around with scissors," unquote. The grand jury report documented one case involving a 17-year-old whose baby was delivered at around 30 weeks. According to the report, the infant was breathing and moving before being killed. Quote, "He was breathing and moving when Dr. Gosnell severed his spine and put the body in a plastic shoebox for disposal. The doctor joked that this baby was so big he could walk me to the bus stop," it said. Gosnell denied that any infants were born alive, claiming the movements observed by staff were involuntary. And during the trial, jury members were shown pictures of unborn babies who had been killed by Gosnell, showing how their skulls had been crushed and spinal cords cut. Other workers stated that Gosnell stored baby parts in jars in a refrigerator and routinely did abortions past 24 weeks of gestation. Quote, "The bigger the baby, the more he charged," is what the grand jury report stated. The investigation further found that Gosnell's clinic operated in unsafe and unsanitary conditions. The grand jury described like blood-stained furniture, improperly sterilized instruments, and the storage of fetal remains throughout the facility. Quote, "It was a baby charnel house," is what the grand jury said. Gosnell was also convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the death of a woman who died in his facility during an abortion. Additionally, he pled guilty to federal charges related to running a pill mill out of his facility and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, including oxycodone and codeine and things like that. So, anyway, I mean, just a terrible, terrible, evil individual. And he's no longer breathing. And so there is some sadness in the fact that I'm sure we probably know where he ended up, but you know, in the end, I mean, this was a case where he was just a very vile, terrible person. All right. Well, I'd love to hear what you have to think on the stories of the week, and maybe we missed one that you thought, hey, you know what? How come you didn't cover this? I would love to hear from you. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.